Skip it up and that up.
It was so funny the other day when I put up that video, Christmas Day actually, when I put up the video that I was getting the Core i7 processor, how many people started vehemently, I think I said that word wrong, but whatever, I'm not cutting it, were like hardcore defending AMD, saying, oh, if you bought the newest AMD processor and you overclocked it to 4.7.21513118 gigahertz and you started fapping to a picture of the AMD CEO, it'll actually be 10 times faster than a Core i7. I promise you, Rich, I promise you, you're such an Intel fanboy. First off, I want to know where people who are defending AMD, this is a person who's been pretty much solely AMD for over a decade, but we'll get into that in a minute. Where are you getting these tests and reviews from? From AMD themselves? Because every single review I've seen about the newest FX processors, whether it be major review websites all the way down to independent reviewers, say that the i7's Ivy Bridge bury the FX 8-core chips from AMD in every single category. The i5s, not even the Ivy Bridge, the Sandy Bridge i5s actually give AMD's newest offering a run for their money. It's insane how poorly the new FX chips perform. Just the whole 8-core FX bullshit is just a joke in general. But I know you're going to say I'm an Intel fanboy. Let me tell you about a different time when AMD was actually king. Sit down, grab some cocoa or some beer or pinch your nipples, whatever. I'm going to tell you a story. So since I would say late 2002, 2003, my main rig for music production, audio editing, watching porn, whatever, has been AMD, okay? I had two other secondary machines. I had a Dell Pentium 4 desktop, and I had a Gateway Pentium 4 laptop, but those weren't my main machines. They were recreational machines, pretty much. I used the desktop for a couple productivity things, but they were just secondary computers. So back in 2003, I actually it was pretty badass, man. It was pretty affordable, so I opened up a mini recording studio. I worked at a deal with a storage garage in my area because they actually had heat, they had bathrooms, and it costed next to nothing. I was going to get an office, but it was too sweet of a deal. Not the point, though. Anyway, I had, in 2003, I believe it was 2003, I know it was no later than 2003, I bought a Hewlett-Packard AMD, not sure the actual processor, but it's 2003 vintage, so do your math from there. That's not the point of the story, knowing exact specs, but it was an AMD rig made by HP. And it was an amazing machine. I used to have Acid Pro on there. I had SoundForge. I couldn't remember the name of it. And the AMD machine, I mean, I upgraded it to 2 gigabytes, which back then 2 gigabytes is like 32 gigabytes now in comparison. It handled everything beautifully. I remember I would put a ton of different, effects when I was doing audio editing. I would add reverb, limiters, compression, all in real time. And there was virtually no lag on a single core AMD chip desktop rig from HP back in 2003. That's pretty impressive. Now, I remember when I started working on an album for somebody, because I was all over the place, I was working, going to school, doing all this stuff, I wanted a rig at home. So I went to Dell and I'm like, let me try an Intel equivalent. I bet it, it's because it was a year later, it was 2004 when I looked for a secondary rig. I bet, I'll go Intel, they have a good price. It's about the same price as my HP machine. I'll get it for home, should be just as fast, if not faster, right? As Sank Uger from The Young Turk says, wrong again, Bob. The AMD HP machine that was a year older, okay, same software, virtually the same hardware in terms of, both machines had 2 gigs of RAM, both had the same size hard drives, so on and so forth. The older AMD machine destroyed the Intel machine when it came to performance. That Intel computer, even though it was newer, when I started putting effects on tracks and plugins and limiters and compressors, would lag to the point that I had to actually drive to the studio to work on a project. The machine was useless, even though I had the same amount of RAM, same storage, similar specs. The slightly slower AMD was 10 times faster than that Intel, because at the time, even though AMD didn't have the bigger market share, they had a better architecture than Intel had. Yes, there was a time that AMD not only was equivalent to Intel, they were actually superior. People who were building gaming rigs back there preferred AMD over Intel because they had faster chips that gave better performance. My, how times have changed. Now fast forward to like 2007-ish, when multi-core processors from both AMD and Intel started rolling out, like the Core 2 Duo, Athlon, X2, so on and so forth. Intel started being the performance king, okay? They were almost dominating AMD in every category when it came to performance. Actually, I think every single category they were dominating them. They were the better performing processors came from Intel, period. But even though that was true, AMD, for far less money, even though they had slower chips, were the budget performers. They weren't as powerful as what Intel was offering, but they still gave you a hell of a bang for the buck. And I remember, because I took a PC building hiatus and I just got back into it in 07. I was a technician part-time at Circuit City. I remember asking George, he was big into doing computers, should I go AMD or Intel? He's like, well, Intel is superior. They have, better performing products, but AMD for the dollar gives you a damn good deal. And the chip I was looking at, the Athlon X2 I was looking at, was like half the price of even entry-level stuff from Intel, if I'm remembering right. If I'm wrong, but it was a lot cheaper, let's put it that way. And everything I did on it was great. Even at the time, when I started doing, RLM Audio Review Tech USA stuff, handled that great. I remember I was playing Crysis in 720p with no anti-aliasing, playing Crysis on Ultra and getting about 30 frames per second. It would go down to 29, 28 here and there. And I know 720p isn't an ultra high resolution, but it's still pretty impressive for a budget gaming / video editing rig from 2007. And that was a good place for AMD to be. I mean, yeah, it would be nice if they had a chip that actually blew Intel out of the water in terms of performance, but having that budget performance market was good for them. Now with the FX chips, they don't even have that. I mean, think about it. I don't have a micro center near me, so I had to spend $278 on my Core i7. But if you go to a micro center, if you have one by you, you could pick up the Ivy Bridge Core i7 3770K, all right, for like $220. The cheapest I've seen AMD's, FX 8-core top of the line, I think it's 8350 chip, is $190. Go compare benchmarks between those two chips and see if the Intel chip is worth $30 more. If you don't think so, I don't know what to tell you. My point being is that AMD isn't even the budget performer anymore. They aren't the company you go to. Yes, their product is inferior, but it still gives you a good bang for the buck. You can't even justify purchasing them now. I could see if the Intel Core i7 was like $200 more, then I'd be like, yeah, of course, go with the 8-core FX chip from AMD. It's half the price, doesn't have the same benchmarks, but you're saving $200. They don't even have that market anymore. You could get a similar offering from Intel and it wipes the floor with what AMD has to offer. So they're not even the budget performer anymore. AMD is in deep trouble. I don't want them to be. AMD has served me very well for over a decade. I have had excellent products from AMD and I have been very happy with them. As a matter of fact, the parts in the computer, like I still haven't built I haven't put the i7 and Gigabyte motherboard in my rig yet. The 6-core chip I have and the Gigabyte motherboard for the AMD Gigabyte motherboard I have in there now, I'm going to put in my apartment and put as a kind of like a home theater / budget gaming rig. I love AMD. I think they made fantastic products for a very long time. That was my phone. I hope that they make a comeback, because if they don't, and Intel's the only show in town, Intel fanboys don't rejoice, because here's what's going to happen. Prices are going to inflate for the enthusiast market, and Intel's products are going to become crappier and slide in quality because they have no competition. So be careful what you wish for before you hope AMD goes under. Alright, this video is going over 10 minutes. I had a lot to say in this topic. So what's your take on AMD? Do you think they have a future in the enthusiast market? Do you think they could ever make a comeback? Or do you think it's going to be an Intel-only show from here on out? Make sure to rate, comment, favorite, and subscribe. And as always, thank you for supporting Review Tech USA. I gotta go to work. Have a good one.